Order. Order. I call on Tony Vaughan to move the motion.
Thank you, Sir John. It's a privilege to serve under your chairship. Chair, there are many dedicated people who are working to support children with special educational needs and disabilities in my constituency of Folkestone and Hythe, in schools, doctor surgeries, social services, and by many other professionals. But I'm afraid to say that children in Folkestone and Hythe are being failed every day by the broken SEND system in Kent, presided over by Reform UK-run Kent County Council. This is not an entirely negative speech, but I do need to start by describing what we are seeing on the ground every day before moving on to the way forwards. Now, the reality in Kent is that under Reform stewardship, the situation for SEND support has deteriorated to crisis point. My inbox is full of desperate parents. This is not a bureaucratic failure alone, it is a moral failure. In 2025, children in Kent with SEND are still denied the basic dignity, respect and support that any civilised society should provide. The stories from my constituency are not just troubling, they are harrowing indictments of a local authority that has lost its moral compass. Take the case of one boy who was diagnosed with autism and pathological demand avoidance, now in Year 6 at a specialist SEND school. His parents, supported by professionals, identified the secondary school that could best meet his complex needs, but instead Reform UK's Kent County Council named a different school which itself had admitted that it could not meet his needs. And to compound this, the EHCP, which is meant to be a living document, mostly referred to his infant years. He is 11 now. Disgracefully, his future is being locked to outdated paperwork. And when his parents challenged the decision at the tribunal, KCC brazenly admitted that their sole reason for choosing an inappropriate school was money. Let's call that what it is: institutional neglect, sanctioned from the very top of this council. So, John, KCC are gaming the tribunal system as a delaying tactic to push off the date when they must pay for SEND children's needs. KCC spends far more than any other local authority in this country on SEND tribunals, amounting to millions of pounds every year. And that is despite losing almost all of them. And that is a failure of leadership of epic proportions. And furthermore, my team is inundated with accounts of heartbreak, of children's needs dismissed and families abandoned. Another local child with complex SEND has been on a sharply reduced timetable since February 2025. The school was forced by lack of resources to push a plan at pace and in a fashion entirely unsuited to him. He was failed not by his teachers but by the absent leadership of the council. There's a child in my constituency who for an entire year had been denied any placement simply due to the delays in drawing up an EHCP, a direct result of council paralysis. And a further example, and perhaps the most shocking and saddening, I have a family whose child has been driven to despair by this failed system, who has voiced the wish not to go on living. That should horrify all of us, and it's happening under the council's watch.
Will my honourable friend give way?
I will.
Thank my honourable friend, and thank you, Sir John, for serving under your chairship. I mean, listening to my honourable friends' stories, they all completely match what I'm getting in my inbox and in my surgeries. These are repeated stories across the county. My constituency's got a higher than the national and regional and county average for people with learning disability needs. We're just not getting the support we need. And in particular, the two things that I wanted to flag up were the fact that the SEND team at the council are extremely unresponsive to parents and to schools, and indeed to myself and my office, and I'm sure that's true of colleagues. But also this pattern of schools are saying they can care for someone, but they're being turned down from looking after that child, and that's happening over and over again, and people are being forced to travel for many miles across the county in a way that actually simply can't be done with children with this level of need.
I just remind you, intervention should be short, but I'm a kind and generous chap. Tony Vaughan.
Thank you, Sir John. I thank my honourable friend for his intervention. His experience is very similar to mine, and my postbag reflects a kind of ongoing unresponsivity, essentially, that results in people feeling that they are just lost in the system, and that is entirely unacceptable. And on a slightly different theme, for SEND children wishing to access a grammar school education in Kent. KCC seem to be refusing requests for extra time for the 11+ test in breach of the Equality Act, and without giving any reasons. It is the law that extra time must be granted where a reasonable adjustment is required under the Equality Act. Yet Kent's Special Access Panel puts roadblocks and unfairness in the way to stifle opportunities for our young people. These failures stretch beyond Folkestone and Hythe. They blight every corner of Kent, as my honourable friend has said. This is a county-wide neglect shrouded in excuses. Now, Sir John, I'm not blind to the scale of the challenges, but I will not excuse the years of inaction and mismanagement, first under the Tories and now under Reform UK. I will.
John, first of all, can I commend the honourable gentleman for Folkestone and Hythe for bringing this forward? And he's quite right to outline the issue with the growing demand and the complexity of the needs. And a similar thing has happened, not just in Kent, but it's happening in the United Kingdom. Happened 51% of increase in Northern Ireland in 7 years, gives you an indication of that. But does the honourable gentleman agree that perhaps it's now time for a completely different approach? And does the honourable gentleman also agree that the education and opportunities needs of our children must be prioritised and funded? Otherwise, we consign a group of children to a life of feeling not good enough and not achieving enough.
Thank the honourable gentleman for his intervention. I completely agree with his points, and it's precisely why we need to have wholesale change in the system, which is the change that the government is preparing to consult on, and we will, of course, listen very carefully to those proposals when they come forward. But I just want to talk now briefly about the system itself in Kent. It is the position that nationally demand for SEND support has grown. EHCP requests have surged 140% since 2015, as per the National Audit Office. In 2022, Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission handed down an improvement notice for 9 glaring SEND failings in Kent. And yes, KCC did scramble to implement an accelerated progress plan, and after government scrutiny in 2024, the notice was lifted. But I still ask, where are the real improvements? My postbag tells a starkly different story. And I must raise concerns about the safety valve programme, a deal from 2021 between the Department for Education and KCC. This was supposed to plug deficits, but in practice often made access to vital support even harder for families. And in areas with safety valve deals, like Kent, EHCPs have become harder to obtain and parents are forced to jump over ever higher hurdles. Safety valve priorities mean that financial savings are trumping the needs of children in Kent. And I will.
Oh, I'm not. He's slightly older than me. Thank you. Thank my honourable friend, and I thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. But in my constituent, Bexley Crayford, we border Kent, and we have a safety valve as well, and an Ofsted judgment of systemic failings. So for our children who cross that border, we have similar issues that you experience. And as part of those reforms, would my honourable friend join with me in welcoming and encouraging the Minister to look at how those issues work on a cross-borough basis, where children may live in one borough but then visit schools or use schools in another?
Intervention. He's absolutely right. We have to have, when we're looking at how to change the system overall, we have to avoid a situation where we have postcode lotteries and inconsistency, because a child who lives one side of the border is simply not in a position to take any blame for the failures of the two local authorities. So the programme of the special access system, the safety valve system, has created financial targets which have led to perverse incentives to withhold help, suppress demand and punish aspiration. And that, Sir John, is not reform, it is rationing. And the result is that we see inappropriate placements, adversarial council relationships and broken trust. Kent's families have had enough. This was policy making for short-termism, not for real change. It was exactly the kind of sticking plaster politics that we have seen in recent years under the Tories, and Kent's children are paying the price. And I demand from Kent County Council urgent, transparent and measurable actions to improve SEND in our communities. Now, I want to say a few words about those who have been running Kent County Council since May. Reform UK has recently accused SEND parents of abusing the system, a view which shames that party and this country. Reform UK were elected in Kent because they said they would cut waste and abuse. Yet when their baseball cap-wearing young smart guys turned up, they found what everyone else already knew, which was that there was nothing left to cut after 14 years of Tory austerity. They promised millions in savings but delivered only empty rhetoric and more hurt for those in need. And according to Reform, the reason for our SEND crisis is waste and abuse, and that, I'm afraid, grotesquely misreads the reality faced by children and parents battling for support. It is genuine, practical, long-term change that is needed and long overdue. As Folkestone High's first Labour MP and as part of a Labour government determined to repair what has been broken, I'm committed to forging solutions and not division. And so I welcome the government's drive to build a fairer, truly inclusive SEND system. And I agree with the government's position that inclusivity for SEND students must be embedded in mainstream schools and accountability move to the heart of the DFE schools group led by the schools minister, a reform which has to be about inclusivity at its core. I fully support the government programme which covers 1 in 6 primary schools to train teachers in understanding neurodiversity. And I recently read an article in The Economist about how Portsmouth is providing an inclusive approach to supporting children with SEND needs. In Portsmouth, students with behavioural and learning difficulties are no longer referred to the NHS automatically for a medical diagnosis. Instead, each school's SEND coordinator or a designated teacher sits down with parents to draw up the child's neurodiversity profile, which then allows teachers and parents to identify how best to accommodate the children's needs and to identify stressors which make it harder to learn. And this helps identify specific things that could help that child. And it's only if that approach doesn't work that medical professionals are brought in. And the adaptations that are needed are often quite simple. At one school, some students have a timeout pass to leave class for a few minutes when they need a quiet space or to reset or a short break to run up and down the stairs. Tinted plastic overlays can help children with dyslexic symptoms. And teachers use an empathetic approach for things like missing a uniform tie, for example. So a friendly greeting before asking nicely about the tie's whereabouts prevents the build-up of tension, which causes problems. Now, this approach ensures help for children with additional needs is not dependent on a formal medical diagnosis or referral and creates a culture where everybody can receive timely assistance through flexible, graduated support. And Plymouth's commitment to the shared best practice and ongoing collaboration makes SEND support a normal part of mainstream education, which benefits everybody. And I'm glad to say that Kent has started to pilot this approach. I support the government's work to ensure Ofsted now grades down any school that excludes or rolls off SEND students, and the additional investment being made by the Labour government, including the real terms increase to the core schools budget, is crucial for SEND children and for recruitment and retention. Frontline staff deserve security, reward and respect. And last year's autumn budget pledged an additional £11.2 billion increase in educational spending by 25-26, with £1 billion ring-fenced for SEND. And this new funding would enable more children with SEND to thrive and not simply survive in our schools. It's right the government is carefully considering how SEND should be reformed, and I support the Education Secretary's commitment to real co-creation with reform designed with and not for children, families and practitioners. I want to end on a positive note. I recently visited the Beacon School in my constituency, which is a school that supports children and young people with profound, severe and complex needs. I was blown away by the dedication of the staff who were setting children up for life and not just educating them. And I enjoyed meeting the children and young people there who were learning, creating, building and thriving. And the school's work to prepare children and young people for the world of work was, frankly, cutting edge. So I want to say to every teacher, support worker and professional working with children with special educational needs across all Folkestone and Hythe schools and in Kent, a huge thank you. The system is held up by you, and I will make sure that the system backs you and the children whose lives you change every day. So, John, we must ensure that every child gets the support that they need to thrive and to achieve their potential in life. That is the mission of this Labour government, and despite the scale of the challenge, we will and we must make this hope a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. I remind members they should bob if they wish to be called in the debate, and I